and thank you for joining us for this exciting Edpuzzle Live. I'm Kate Hodges, and I'm joined by a couple fellow Edpuzzlers today, Manny Discotech and Majo Techmaker. How's it going, Manny?
Hello, and here's Majo. How you guys doing?
Fine, very excited.
I'm excited. I've always wanted to talk about comic books in my classroom. I just didn't know where to start. So like this is OMG, like I am so curious about it. And Majo's joining us all the way from Mexico City.
Yeah, hello from Mexico City.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I am ridiculously excited, okay? Because fun fact for anyone who does not know, I'm a former English language arts teacher. And whenever I was planning out my thematic units, right, we start with our core text, and then I would go and try to find graphic novels. I want diverse novels. I want purposeful, meaningful novels. And it felt like I was hunting forever. And then I found the king of comics, Tim Smyth, who is with us today.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much for being here, Tim.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
We are so excited. And Majo, you were actually saying something very specific about teaching graphic novels. Tell us what that was.
Yeah, I was telling them that here in Mexico, I haven't seen a lot of teachers teach through comics. So when Kate and Manny told me about you, Tim, it was super exciting for me to get to know you and get to know your work and to share with us how you started and how can we start with teachers, because I think this is a great opportunity for teachers to teach through something that kids are gonna love. So
well said, Majo. And so let's just jump in. We have so much to cover in such a short amount of time. So Tim, we're going to throw it off to you and tell us everything we need to know about implementing graphic novels for meaningful conversations in our classroom.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. And there we go. All right. And there we go. Okay, are we good?
Yes.
We are good.
All right. So I could talk for about 3 days on this topic. So I'll talk for about 15 minutes or so. And then Manny's also going to do a really great presentation on how to use Edpuzzle to do all this visual literacy too. So there's my website, teachingwithcomics.com. If after this conversation, I would love to stay in touch with everybody. So I'll talk kind of real fast and give some brief ideas on how we can use comics to open up these really important conversations. And then feel free to email me, reach out to me on social media, and we can follow up after the conversation. So my son, who was termed a reluctant reader very early on because his teacher did not see the value in comics, now does book reviews. He loves to read everything. He's in 8th grade right now. And so one of his favorite books is New Kid from Jerry Craft. And if you look towards the bottom here on one of his reviews, Jordan has to act differently. I don't know why we can't just be ourselves. He loves to play video games too, just like me. It doesn't matter what color we are or how much money we have, be human. And so my son identified with this kid who was struggling with being a Black kid in a suburban school, but also struggling just to be a new kid. And my son had changed districts, and he identified in a lot of ways through that. One of my daughter's favorite books from Laurie Halse Anderson is Tempest Tossed, about Wonder Woman. But because it's Laurie Halse Anderson, she wants to teach us a really important lesson. And so as Wonder Woman being a refugee, this graphic novel is about refugees in the modern sense and what the world is going through. And so it allows us to open up that conversation. And a lot of times a kid will grab this book, but not a textbook, or they won't read the 5 different documents we have. But this is a way to open the door to those important conversations. Go with the Flow is another one. So this is a book about girls and when they begin menstruation and going through puberty and all these things, and really standing up to schools and not being embarrassed. And it opened up the door to conversations between my oldest daughter and me. So again, it's those books that allow us in a really engaging and meaningful way. And what's great about visual literacy is it allows us to really see ourselves in the comics. And it allows us to see the story through the character's eyes. Here's just an example where in Duke Nukem in Captain America, where he's this really pro ultra nationalist, America kind of a thing, patriotic. And, this idea where if I just show this on my smartboard to open that conversation about, well, what does it mean to be an American? We are a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of, and so instead of me proselytizing in front of the classroom, it's a way for, okay, let me put this on a smartboard. The do now is let's have a conversation. What do you think about it? What's your reflection? What's a question or two that you might have? Miss Marvels, you got a 16-year-old Pakistani American girl from Jersey City, was originally written by G. Willow Wilson. And so we talk about gerrymandering. We talk about the importance of voting. We talk about this misunderstanding of cultural references and cultural norms and what it means to be quote unquote different and not mainstream America. And so we have these conversations through comics in a very important way. This X-Men I use all the time. I mean, this is the comics that I grew up with. The X-Men stand as the different in society. They are the outcast in society. And I had a lot of things going through that as a child, and I know a lot of us have. And it inspired me that these kids with these powers who have been ostracized from society decided to do something and not just give up. And so, again, just having this type of a panel in our conversations allows me to engage with the students in a way that I really wouldn't be able to in the same way without the comics. We have graphic novels on, boys who like to wear dresses. So what? This new one, Galaxy, the prettiest star at DC, is putting out a whole line of graphic novels aimed at teens. And this is a transgender superhero. And so these are the comics that my students and my own children are growing up with. And so we normalize the quote unquote other. And that is so vital in our conversations. Here, I read a lot of different teacher guides. Pop Culture Classroom is a great organization, and they make these comics. And so I've helped with them. I've written the teacher guides. And so we see here where this kid is sitting on a suitcase waiting to go into the Japanese American internment camps. So again, that othering. And the artist did not have these tags on here. So this is where the visual literacy piece came in. I sent the artist this photograph and I said, listen, these families were referred to by number. And when we talk about the Jewish Holocaust, when we talk about dehumanizing and othering people, and so the artist added in those tags, and it changes, I think, in a very powerful way, how we view what was happening. And so students are able to make that immediate connection to the Jewish Holocaust with the tattoos and those types of things. And then we tie it into current events and fake news or disinformation and these types of things. So it is about opening up emotional conversations. It is about talking about current events, but it is also, our students are being bombarded with images all the time on various multimedia, social media apps. And how do we teach them to slow down and really kind of take a look at things? And my comic book readers are the ones who are automatically the most skilled in these types of, being able to put up their BS meter, if you will, and start to question about what they're seeing. I've been part of a U.S. State Department program where we've taught comics around the world on every continent, except for Antarctica. And we have teachers from all different backgrounds and their students. And so comics really are universal. And we're able to share our experiences in our own cultures through comics. And we create comics and we share them. And it's amazing how comics, kids around the world, that is the one thing, music and comics, that will bring these kids together. Laurie Hall Sanderson, the Speak graphic novel adaptation. I was a little worried about the adaptation for this one because it's such a beloved book and so important to so many people. But although I had read the prose book many, many times, it was a graphic novel that really made me stop and think, and it resonated with me, particularly this image on the left. I've had some issues, again, as a child, and this one panel, even though it's about her experiences being sexually assaulted as a 9th grader, it allowed me to identify in a way that I couldn't in other ways. And so whether it's anxiety, whether it's whatever the background might be and the things that we're going through, this one panel, we all have that beast in our gut that's eating us alive. And, we think to ourselves, like, we know that we're just so messed up, and we're not. And so that's the importance of this visual literacy. And you can read a book, you can read, a 10-page essay on this. But for me, it was this one panel that really resonated for me.
Tim, I just stop it right there. Like,
absolutely.
You're making me cry. So I taught 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and I'm just by reading what the comments are saying. It's like my students didn't know the language in where they can express themselves, how they were feeling. And so an image, like, is like, I don't feel alone. Like, I can identify with a character. Oh,
Yeah.
it's like, I feel now that I'm out of the classroom that I miss so much that I could have done with my students. So this is, oh my God, this is so powerful.
Well, and Manny, I think you bring up such an important point, right? We can identify with these characters. And also for my kiddos, I taught remedial reading. And so for those kiddos, when the curriculum still said we had to read Beowulf, and I was able to bring in the graphic novel Beowulf for kids to be able to look at that imagery, and it reinforced what they believed the text to say. The increase in self-efficacy, the confidence, and belief that they were a capable, competent reader. It also increased how they saw themselves in all of that and in our classroom. And it was so powerful.
Yeah, and I'll say, just having my classroom full of these books, even if the kids don't actually read them, just seeing them in the classroom on the first day of school makes them say, okay, I'm seen in this classroom in some way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that.
You know, I try to be the adult that I needed when I was a kid. You know, I went to Philadelphia public schools, and I had a good education, but there were so many kids in the class, and we were just, I didn't know what transgender was when I was a high school student. You know, I had no understanding of it. And it really is through these books that I'm able to, you know, really experience the lives of other people in a really powerful way. I mean, here up on the screen, Hey Kiddo from Jarrett Krasaska. I mean, he grew up where his mother was a prostitute and addicted to drugs, and was raised by his grandparents. And it is such a powerful book, this graphic biography. And by sharing his truth and his background, that normalizes it for the other kids that we know. I mean, we're all struggling through something.
Yeah, but the thing is, sometimes the student doesn't even know what they're going through. Like when I was going through coming out, I didn't know. I just was feeling all kinds of things. And if I have a character that I'm like, oh, that's exactly how I feel. You don't know. And then as a, you know, the teacher probably has no idea, you know, they don't know how to relate because that is, you know, foreign to them. But if you have a book, and that's the thing, I also taught language arts. It's very hard to find connections when your student relates to something and then they start loving reading. And then teaching a 2-year-old to love to read, that's hard. But this, oh, this is super bold.
And this is a powerful resource for kids because you can teach them subjects that are maybe difficult for grown-ups to tell kids. And you can use comics to identify and to learn some things that maybe as an adult it's difficult for you to share with the kids. So yeah, that's great.
Well, and that speak passage that Tim was talking about, that frame, I taught speak to my freshmen, and we used that panel, and it was palpable in the classroom that everyone could just feel that moment because it just reads, it speaks to you differently when you read it on this panel. Okay, Tim, I'm sorry, we got so excited. We just
Edai got me excited, so thank you for your comment, Eddie.
And I think an important piece of this too is allowing the students to be the creators too, and to share their voice in a really powerful way. Like through the U.S. State Department program, we had a girl who lost her father at the beginning of Ramadan, and so she wrote this comic about it. And you know, the language barrier wouldn't have allowed it, but I'm able to visualize her face. You know, I lost my father at the beginning of the school year a few years ago, and so for me, the beginning of every school year is hard, and for her, the beginning of every Ramadan is hard. And so again, it allows us to open those conversations. And you don't have to be an artist. You can be the person who does the research, the pre-writing. You can do the captioning, the lettering. You can be the artist. You can use Pixton or storyboard that, or, you know, all these different things, but allow them to share their voice. And comics come out every Wednesday. I am at the comic book store every Wednesday. And so they reflect what's going on in us, in our society, in the world. And so for me to talk about police profiling, for me to talk about Black Lives Matter, for me to talk about the different things that we're seeing in our country, here's a panel I can put up from a Batman comic where he talks about this, and Batman's caught between two worlds. where he's very much supporting the police, but at the same time, he also understands that it is a complicated issue, to say the least. And so we can put that up on the board and then all of a sudden just start having a conversation. We can talk about Romeo and Juliet, who don't have to be white. And so this Gareth Hines adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, which is probably more accurate anyway, Shakespeare can be timeless. It can go to other cultures. It can go to other worlds and futures and universes in this, The War from Stan Lee, which is really powerful. But, this idea, and I love from Enter the Spider-Verse from Miles Morales, anyone can wear the mask.
Yeah. My sons love Miles Morales because I'm like, they're blacks. I'm like, yeah. But once they saw him, like, oh, he's like me. He's like me, Papa. I'm like, yeah. So it's like it's important for them to see themselves,
yes,
represented.
Yes. And that's where I really kind of got started in using comics in the classroom. Was I had a kid come up to me when I was talking in class about Miles Morales when he first came out. And it was an African-American boy who was kind of fairly quiet, good student, but we didn't really talk a whole lot. And he came out to me after class to talk to me about Miles Morales. And he was more impressed that Spider-Man looked like him than the fact that we had a black president. I was like, wow. Wow.
That's what they like.
Yeah. But, even we've got body positive, we've got all different kinds of characters. And this panel here, like Miles Morales says, hey, listen, I don't want to be known as the black Spider-Man. I'm just Spider-Man. And so that's another conversation we can have. Why is it Black Lightning and Black Panther? And why isn't it white this and white that? And what does that mean in our culture? We could talk about what a blurred is. And, this is idea that, comics are not just for, straight white guys. It's not, rock and roll is for black people as much as it is for white people. And country music is for all these different kinds of things that we could talk about with our pop culture. And I'll just flip through these, just some of my favorites, but Riri Williams, one of the smartest people in the Marvel universe. Naomi, who's fantastic. We have a Korean Hulk. We have female Wolverines. We've got black and female and gay Captain Americas and Iceman. We've got Muslim superheroes. And so another conversation we can have is, who should Captain America be? Who would Captain America be in 50 years? What would Captain America have been 2 years ago, or Captain Mexico, or Captain Iraq, or those sorts of things? And I have my students design in my global history course a superhero for different cultures. And so we're seeing in Captain America now where, of course, on the left, we have Ariel, who's a female Captain America. In the center, we have a young gay Captain America. On the far right, we've got a Native American Captain America. And would a Native American want to be Captain America or not? That's a whole conversation that we can have. We've got the suffragette movement, and we can reimagine, okay, what would Captain Britain look like if we had put her back in that time during the suffragette movement? I have my students analyze comics from different decades and what are the different social norms? What do the advertisements mean? All those sorts of things. It's all visual literacy, all textual evidence. So we talk about gender norms, technology at the time, all the different things that we can get from comics as an artifact. That's what they are. So here we have letters to the editor, even, which is just enough to break your heart. Here's a gay kid who writes in when Iceman came out as being gay, and says, hey, look, I live in a very liberal part of Canada. Growing up, I never saw gay superheroes, nor did I have any role models that I could look up to. Kids weren't exactly friendly to me. So this means something very much to these kids, or to Black Panther, changing how we view Africa, right? Changing how all those different viewpoints. We can go back in history, like when Marvel and DC were trying to raise money for the famine in Ethiopia. In Champions, we have, and I bought a class set of these comics for my kids, where there's a school shooting on Miles Morales' high school. And my kid said to me, wow, Mr. Smyth, this is in our comics now. This is where we are. And so we need to talk about these things. We can't just ignore them. Or Spider-Man being at ground zero. I prefer to talk to my students this way than the emotional, horrifying videos sometimes that we watch in class about 9/11. This is a very non-invasive way to talk about 9/11 and the questions that we had and when it happened and why is it in the comics and how was it approached in the comics. And just the idea of seeing ourselves in our comics. I love this Black Panther variant copy that I have in my classroom. You know, these two Black kids say, hey, that's me, right? And that's the power of all this. The elections, Captain America. I mean, there's just so much. Like I said, I'm not going to get into everything, but even Spider-Woman having a child, like the male superheroes don't have to give up having a family. They can go out and continue to do those things. And so when she goes out and continues to be a superhero, she is made fun of. She is called a bad mother, and they get into it in the comics. It's fantastic. And then we have March, which is about the civil rights movement, and John Lewis. These are comics that my own kids have created. I had my autistic support kids create comics about how the pandemic impacted them in a civil rights way, and how they were impacted by not being able to go to the supermarket and do their norms. And they shared it with the class. And so I helped them with the wordings, but they gave the ideas to us. The class clapped for them, and it was such a cool thing. Being an immigrant to the United States and not understanding a language, like, you can visually understand this in a very, very powerful way, kind of a thing. Nat Turner about the slave trade, and then Syria, which is where I'll leave off for Manny to talk about how we can connect us to Edpuzzle. But if you Google Medaya Mom, it is a free comic online from Marvel Comics and ABC News about the Syrian civil war, probably one of the most important conflicts in the world that a lot of people simply don't know about. And it's about a mom who's just trying to survive and protect her children. It is a primary source. These are texts that this mom was able to get out to people at ABC News, and they created a comic about her experiences. And so now my students are emotionally and powerfully involved in this story, and the questions that they ask and the research that we do is just so very powerful in what we do and what Medaya Mom is. And we interacted with the authors of the comic. They are reporters and editors from ABC News. They Skyped in with my classroom. Like, you never know who you can interact with unless you reach out to them. So I'll stop sharing here, hopefully.
Yep, I'm gonna remember. Oh, there you go. So here's a link to the ABC website. Let me share my screen so you can read all about it. That is very, very intense for my second graders. But I'm going to give you an example that I could have used in my second graders. This is a partnership that ABC News did. You can read all about the story, and even better, you can literally read the book, the comic book, all online, and you know it's reputable because it's partnered up with ABC News. This is like OMG amazing. So I was trying to find a video, but the video that is in here is embedded, and I'm like, I can't use that in Edpuzzle. So you can record your own video for educational purposes. You're not selling anything. This person has a video in YouTube, so you could use this, to edit with Edpuzzle. My example was about X-Men, because that's what I am familiar with. My students are familiar with comic books, like animated. So I'm gonna play it, and I want to show you how is it that you're gonna add questions so your students will reflect.
Why do people hate us? People fear what they do not understand.
So that quote, I remember when I watched that episode, I said, that is me. I felt so different from anybody else when I was coming out that I felt people were fearing me because people will step away from me. I'm like, I didn't understand. I was like 8. Like, why are people walking away from me? And when I was surrounded by people, I still didn't get it. So like with my bilingual students that they don't know how to read English, I will probably write like out an audio note. You can either type it, but I recorded myself asking this question. Did you see Jubilee's eyes? Did you pay attention to the tone of her voice? Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt so different, like you don't belong, even when you're surrounded by people? So for a second grader, that's intense, but it's like visuals speak more than words sometimes because they don't understand it, but they see their eyes, they can hear the tone of voice. So here in Edpuzzle, you can add that question here, and you can allow your students to respond with audio. So at least my bilingual kids, they can tell you, but they cannot type. They don't know how to type it. So examples like this can be added to the lesson, so as an extension or reflection or however fits in your classroom. But you can use examples like this, or you can use videos, for your secondary students, all in Edpuzzle. And now that I'm watching all your resources, I said, Tim, oh my gosh, how do I know about all these comic books? Because I've never seen them. So if you go to his website, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna put this on the chat. So you have all these resources, and OMG, this is the magical 2 lines. And look at this. Whatever content you teach, he already curated all this comic resources for you.
Yeah, and Tim, can you tell us a little bit about how you have it organized? Like if I'm going here, I'm lesson planning. Tell us how you have all of this organized for us.
So organize is a loose term, but as the topics, I try to do LGBTQIA plus, or I'll do like at the top, because it's AAPI month, I'll try to do resources for that, or ones for World War I or World War II or genocide, or it's a constantly evolving website, and it's just a labor of love, because when I started doing all this, these things weren't out there. Now there's a lot of teachers who are part of the movement. But so I wanted that website for other people to go to. And I love that people from around the world are able to interact and find these comments. Because like you said, it's hard to get started.
No, yes, absolutely. It is. So let's just jump into Q&A, because we want to give everybody an opportunity to ask Tim a question if you have one. And in the meantime, Tim, I definitely have a question. So if I'm a teacher and I want to bring graphic novels into my lesson plans, into my classroom tomorrow, how do I start? Like, should I worry that my kids don't know how to read graphic novels? How do I do this?
That's a great question. Sometimes our most advanced readers can totally get lost reading a comic book. And I learned that my first year. It was a good lesson to learn. They were getting frustrated because they didn't know how to read. Like, we always slow down and say, here's how you read a textbook. Here's how you read a poem. Yeah. You also have to teach how to read a comic. And so that has to be part of your lessons. And so I try to model okay, here's a panel, because a lot of times the kids will skip the pages without any words on it because they're so used to, that doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And that, in a lot of cases, and Manny had said this yesterday, a lot of times those are the most important pages. So yeah, absolutely, we have to do that. On my website, probably the most popular part of it, it's where I park any free comics resources that are, legally, if you will, available for educators to use in their classroom. There's all kinds of things that are on there. And so in that case, you don't have to spend any money. You can go to a garage sale. You can go to the dollar bin at the comic book store and find different things. There's all kinds of different resources that are out there just to kind of get started with. And I always highly suggest walk into your local comic book store just once. They're very friendly, and say, hey, I teach this. Do you have anything about that? Because I think a lot of times for people my age, we have a misunderstanding of what comics are because we haven't been in a comic book store since we were 8 or 9 years old, and things have very much changed.
I love it. So here on your website, I'm looking at, are you writing a book?
Yeah. My first book comes out on July 6th.
That's so cool.
Yeah, very excited. And we're actually using it to teach a course through the University of Pennsylvania. So comics are going Ivy League. So I'm starting my first course this summer. So I'm really excited about that too.
Well, and Manny, you actually lead into we're gonna do a book club with Tim's work. So,
yes.
So I wasn't gonna reveal that yet, but I mean, gosh, I'm just on a roll this week saying all these things I shouldn't say. So while we're here, get excited, you guys, because we're going to read this book together. And we're really excited about it. Tim, I have one final question, and I have to know, what, hands down, when you talk to your students and look at trends over the years, what is the go back to graphic novel they always really respond to and really love, if you had to pick just one?
The book that they always go back to is the March trilogy. Because we get to experience the civil rights movement through John. Oh, there you go.
Full of Post-its, I'm sure.
Yeah, she was talking about that book earlier.
Mm-hmm. And I have
March is great.
I have it in Spanish. I have it in Korean. I have, right. And it is, my students will tell me, so for some of my 11th graders will tell me it is the first book that they've ever truthfully read cover to cover in a school or outside of school. And that's where we are.
It's a great book. I could that's so funny that you said that. Okay, do we have any other questions? We'll give a second for any other questions to come in for Tim, Majo, Manny. Do you guys have anything you would like to add?
I mean, I just follow him on Twitter. I just put his Twitter link on the chat so you can go follow him. I'll put the website because I know I'm going to have some questions later on. You know where to find Tim.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm in love how you are so like how you express this love about comics, and it's the best way or one of the best ways to teach kids. I promise I will talk to my teacher friends and tell them how to teach through comics because, for example, well, there are people here in Mexico that read comics, but there's not a lot of people. And it's interesting how they can use this type of books in their classroom. So yeah, and how to mix it with Edpuzzle like Manny showed us. It's amazing. So yeah, Tim, I will be in contact with you. Like if you said that the March comic is in Spanish, so I'm interested. And yeah, I'll definitely keep in touch with you.
Good. And I just want to say two things. One, so Majo, there's a comic called El Peso Hero. It's a Mexican superhero who is on the border between the United States and Mexico, and it's bilingual. And El Peso Hero, I would absolutely suggest look that one up.
Yeah, I saw it in your website. So I'm going to check it out. I promise.
And then the other is I wouldn't underestimate with Edpuzzle the audio piece of all this. I was explaining before that my son has been in occupational therapy for his hands, and it's hard for him to type. And so that will go a long way to helping ease that extra amount of time that it takes for him, and actually physical pain. But also having taught online and taught in hybrid, and when we do Edpuzzle, sometimes it can be a little impersonal when we're throwing questions at kids. But listening to Manny's voice, I mean, Manny, you almost made me cry. The questions you were asking these kids. And I'm like, I wish that would have been there 2 years ago for me, because we can now connect through a computer in a way that is a lot better than just sharing, questions in a worksheet online. And I think this will be a really powerful way to reach our kids when we do that. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's a more personal way to get in touch with your teacher and your students.
I just share this Rio Bravo comics, which is where El Peso short film, and then the radio novela. This is we could go on and on for hours. Yeah. We gotta respect people's times though, because it's a Saturday. My kids are ready. They're like right next to me. I'm like,
well, Manny, you have to let me do Manny, you have to let me first.
Yes.
If you guys are not reading along with us yet, please do so. We just started a new book club. Our first book is Make Writing by Angela Stockman. Soon coming is Tim's book, which we'll be reading. But Make Writing is our book for May, and then we'll be doing a Twitter chat in early June. So stay tuned, but read along with us and use the hashtag #EdpuzzleReads, because I can't just post it, you guys, all alone. You have to come hang out with me and read. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Tim. I am so looking forward for that book. Oh my gosh, you have opened up my eyes. This is amazing. So if you over there are watching us, or you watching the replay, and you're like, just do it, honey. Just start, because this is inspiring, and you have Tim that can have all the resources for you. You're not alone.
Period.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye.